something about learning, a model that I've been thinking about that really helps a lot. And the core of this is learning loops. The idea is that all learning, in a sense, happens in a process, in what I call a learning loop. And I'm going to share that with you, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so what do I mean by learning loop? Well, the core, what I mean is that it's the way that we learn. All people and all things, in a sense, is a core loop. And it is basically this idea of acting, doing something, okay, perceiving the results of that, making adjustment, and then acting again. That is the core kind of loop, and I like to call it the core fractal. Okay, so let's think about, what do I mean by that? Well, okay, you see this in all the different places. You see this loop, some of you who are involved in quality, that's this, you know, that's the quality loop. An agile process, there's trying stuff, you know, making adjustments, going back. That kind of loop pervades a lot of things. And it also pervades from the lowest levels of single cellular animals, right? So for example, a paramecium. Let's take a paramecium as an example, first of all. We're going to take it down at the lowest level, okay? When I say it's a fractal, I think that a fractal is a pattern that repeats itself in different ways at different levels, okay? And so, take a paramecium. So what happens? A paramecium is going along, swimming with its little cilia. Remember that from high school, it's swimming around, right? It's acting, okay? It perceives a chemical that's, oh, I could eat that, that's good, all right? All right, and it adjusts, it swims towards that and more to a higher density, a gradient of that. It adjusts and acts, and it's kind of that, and so it tends to go towards where there's good stuff. When there's bad stuff, it tends to go away from that, okay? So it sort of has a goal or a motivation. It doesn't have a cognitive goal on that level, but it has a goal or a motivation is, you know, get food, stay away from bad stuff, all right? And then it's got that loop that kind of moves towards that and starts moving in that way. That's a core level. But that happens at all levels of analysis. It happens in our cells, it happens with animals, it happens with a child. When I think about my daughter learning how to ride a bike, you know, she just learned how to ride a bike a little while ago, right? What happens, you know, she has a goal, she wants to learn the bike, she starts, you know, getting on trying it. She has some support, you know, from me and some feedback. We'll talk about that more on that. But then, you know, she tries stuff. She, you know, learning the balance, and she makes mistakes. She tries it. She adjusts again. She falls off. She gets on. Etc. That whole, and she adjusts, and that's that process. Okay, so that process is a core process of all learning. Okay? So, you know, we're a little different than you know, those creatures, but basically the same thing happens. We act on the environment. Okay, we have actions and our outputs. We then perceive the effects, you know, and feedback from those. So coaching, you know, tilting one way, I feel this or that. Okay, and those are what, you know, these experiences. You perceive them, and you go into that learning loop. This happens for, you know, when I say it's fractal, it happens at the level of a cell. It happens at the level of an organism, at a human being, at a team, an organization, and a culture. What happens is there's stuff that happens in the environment, right? And we perceive that, and we adjust, we act, and we adjust. So it can happen at all different levels. For example, you know, at the highest level, you know, we have COVID, right? And we gotta, that's something that's going on in the environment. It's a perturbance in the environment. We perceive that. We have to figure out how to adjust and act according to that. And that's that adaptive process. It's part of an evolutionary process. When you think of evolution, that same loop kind of happens in a more mechanical way, but still it happens where you have in any complex adaptive system, that kind of thing happens where, you know, stuff happens, right? You know, a meteor comes and, you know, and creates, you know, the dinosaurs are extinct, but other animals adapt to that, what's happening, and some survive, and those who are most fit to that change survive and adapt and move on and become fit for that environment. And in some ways, when there are big things that happen, and we happen to be in a time of a big thing, both the digital transformation and on top of that, the COVID and also social transformation, we have a lot of stuff happening in our environment and we have to adapt. And we as learning and development people can think about that and think about how do we support that process. Okay? Now, all right, so that's kind of this core fractal, right? Now, it's a little bit more complicated, this adjusting part with humans. And this is where, when I think about it, when I'm designing learning and helping people learn stuff, you know, in a human, we have a couple of things. This adjustment piece involves another piece, and we call it reflection. So what happens is we're comparing what we perceive to our goals and motivations, okay? You know, saying, okay, hey, this is gonna help me, this is not, okay? But there's a little bit more to it as well. We have our memories. We have, you know, we have a little more complexity than a paramecium, I would hope, right? And so we have these kind of our memory that has in it mental models, our framework, our picture of the world, okay? And that picture of the world, that those mental models then affect both, we compare, okay, how does when I'm perceiving map to those mental models? And things that are positive and say, oh yeah, it's achieving my goal. I might remember, how did I do that? And if I remember it and I get a pleasurable, you know, a positive reinforcement for that, a good feeling, and that increases the motivation, and I remember that, and that become a procedure. And you do that procedure enough, it can become a habit. Okay, and that's where our habits. And so we change those habits. And the other piece of our memory and our kind of how we think about long-term memory, you can also think of what we have is we remember stories, episodes. Okay, and so here's these stories and episodes, and we reflect on, okay, this happened, here's what happened, and I'm going to reflect on that. Oh, and that gives me some kind of adds to my mental model of how I think about the world. So why, okay, this seems abstract, but what does this mean for us? You know, what does this all mean for us? Well, when we think about, let's take an example of, you know, learning to install a device and helping someone to learn how to install a device. What does that mean? Well, okay, I got it, you know, it's on the simplest level, okay, I'm going to have sort of a mental model. Maybe there's some information, and maybe I can get some information, and I'm going to think about that, or I might change something. So this idea of metacognition, I'm going to go back to that in a second, is this idea of, you know, we have our goals and motivations, and we kind of go through that loop. But the thing about as humans and as organizations, we can kind of step back and say, okay, are my goals the right goals? Am I doing the right thing? Is this what I need to install, or if things change, I need to do things in a different way? Okay, and so there's this idea of metacognition, right? So that's thinking about our thinking. Self-directed learning is thinking about what we're doing, and thinking about, are we doing the right thing? Is this the right thing? And you know, in the ideas of the learning organization, Chris Argus and Peter Senge, they talk about, you know, learning loops and double loop learning. So there's a learning loop, but then there's a loop on the loop, and there's these different levels. Okay, how am I learning about the learning? What are my goals? And how do I think about what I want to do? And then the other piece of that is this idea of knowledge inflow. So at the point, it's a certain point where it's say, hey, you know, it's useful to get some information. I'm doing this thing. Let me ask somebody how to do it. Let me look something up. Let me get some content from a learning experience platform at the teachable moment. I'm about to do this. How do I, so when I'm designing learning, I look at learning, when I design learning experiences, I say, okay, I'm going to design an experience where someone has to do something. I'm not going to give them a bunch of content until they need it in order to do that thing in that experience. And then at that teachable moment, say, okay, they can get that information, they can get that content. It's going to be tied to what they need to do. They're going to kind of tie it into their mental models because it's directly related to their actually doing that action. They're motivated to learn it because they need it to solve this problem. Okay, and they're more likely to remember it because they're using it and they're applying it, and they're going to remember it. So there's that idea of giving knowledge at that teachable moment is a key piece of it, that knowledge inflow. Okay, and then the last piece of this, and then I'm going to go back and let's do some examples of how we can think about different problems. And that's what I want to get you to think about. Think of different learning problems, different scales, and then how does it apply? And the last piece is this idea of knowledge outflow, because we may learn something and do something, but also we can just share it with others. We tell stories of how we've done it and share with others and coach others, for example. So this kind of model right here, for me, helps me think about how do I design learning? How do I get learning to experiences that will actually help people accelerate that process of learning, okay? And one other piece of this that comes out of this is, to me, what we all have in the organizations 3 jobs, okay? 3 jobs is to do our work, that's kind of achieve our goals, whatever they are, okay? And the goals can be our internal ones, but they'll come also from the purpose of the organization, the inflow of knowledge or goals from the organization, from our boss, or whatever it is, or a purpose of what we need to do. And then, so we got to do our job. We also are part of our jobs and what we do, let's become more conscious and aware of this and intentional about it, is to learn. So we got to do our job. We got to keep on learning, recognize that that's part of our job, is just to keep on learning and adapting, because that's the only way we're going to adapt in this environment. And the third piece of our jobs are to share. share our learning and support other people because we learn in a social context. So we have 3 jobs: do our job, do the work, learn while we're doing it, and recognize that we do it whether we, and that whether we like it or not, we're going to do it. But maybe if we're conscious about it, especially the reflection part, we may be able to do it more effectively, and then share with others and help others in learning. And that's how an organization can learn as you go up levels of analysis. Okay, that's a lot of stuff, but I said it fast. I wanted to kind of just like put it out there as a model that I use for thinking about different things. I'm going to stop for questions or how it might apply and give some examples of that. So I'll stop right here and see what people think. Questions? Is this too abstract? If it is, let's bring it down to how I actually use it, because I use it. This is my mental model for learning, for helping people learn.
Marty, if I can jump in, a question came from Kathleen, was asking, what is the impact of having to, quote, unlearn, unquote, something to learn something new, updated process or procedure, for example?
Yeah, so here's how I use this model. Think about that. Okay, so we have sort of mental models, which is kind of what we already know, right? That's what we know. If that model is not working too well, okay, because things have changed on the outside, the experiences and the things that are happening, we get some feedback it's not changing. A couple of things. One is, depending on that mental model, is that mental model is very core to us, kind of bases our values, our way of looking at the world, we tend not to change it that easily, which is good because we want to have some stability in our minds, right? But we have to have, and so just one little piece of information that doesn't fit. So for example, if you think about, I don't know, even political types realms, I'm not going to go too far into that, but people have their kind of beliefs, and even if they get information that may contradict it, they dismiss that information. So what we want to do is have enough information that's going to kind of say, okay, things are changing, try it out. Does it work or not? Okay, and eventually we can update our mental models. That's the idea of unlearning the old stuff and seeing, okay, what works now. So the question then means from a learning perspective and designing learning is, how can I create experiences and set up experiences, or how that should support that person going through experiences that kind of show how that old mental model is not working as well as this new one, and see how the new one can work. What doesn't work is just telling someone. This is the idea of learning by doing, and that loop. You just say, no, that's wrong, this is not how it works. You can tell them that, but they're not really going to know it, and they're not going to be able to implement it until they've actually gone through that process of trying it, doing it, seeing the effects of that, perceiving that, reflecting on it, and then updating their own mental models.
Another question came up, to not negate that one. Another saying, but how does this all relate to the world of COVID-19 that we're in right now?
Well, again, it happens at multiple scales. So in the world of COVID-19, you think about it, what's happening is, here's how I think about this. We need to start looking at learning as being kind of embedded in everything we do, okay, and out in the field. There's no time anymore. Things are changing too rapidly. People are distributed. You can't do classroom. To do all these formal training programs that we've done, I've done many of them, that take a long time to develop. Started developing something 3 months ago, 5 months ago, it's outdated by now because so much has changed. And I've seen this a lot with clients that I've been working with. So it's more, how do you take that learning embedded more closely into what's going on? So here's the situation, and speed up those loops. All right, what am I going to do? What do I need to do differently? What kind of information do I need that's going to be really relevant to what I need? How do we, as learning and development and performance technologists, how do we provide that what people need in terms of suggested experiences? How do you get those suggested experiences? And then how do you get the learning? How do you get people the information that they need, just what they need when they need it, and making it easy for them to get those things? That's the kind of stuff we need to do. And what happens in these learning loops is that they speed up. When things change a lot, you got to speed it up and move the learning, kind of decentralize it, and realize, okay, it's incumbent on everybody to learn. What we need to do is set up processes to support that learning process out there. And a lot of them have to be online and digital. They have to be ways to get people that information, but also, interpersonal in the sense of coaching. For example, a key part of what I think a lot of the learning has to happen is kind of the feedback piece of this. So what happens when you reflect, if you get coaching, say, okay, yeah, here's some information on that, or here's some feedback on that. That helps someone say, oh yeah, okay, here's what's working, what's not, here's some guidance, and that helps them. So just like little tiny things, what I call nano coaching, little coaching interactions with a peer or somebody sharing with each other. That's the kind of stuff that's gonna kind of speed up the learning and make it more effective. And as learning professionals, what we need to do is support that process. support that processing happening out in the field.
Great. Miller, are there things you wanted to contribute? I see you're muted right now in the conversation with Marty.
Thanks, Vincent. I'm back. I want to apologize to all of our viewers that are still with us that we had to change rooms, but I like what I'm hearing. Marty, one of the points in your outline was not only learning loops, but also knowledge flows. And I'm wondering a little bit about that in terms of how you look at that, but I'm also wondering if related to the young people we're now training, the Gen X or Gen Z people, do they appear to have a different list of requirements or different list of what they want for training? But let's talk about knowledge flows first, because I'm kind of curious as to just how that works for you.
Yeah, so these learning loops happen. We're not isolated, right? We're all in a social context, right? And
Amen.
So this is the idea of this knowledge inflow and the knowledge outflow, if you see on this model up here. So the idea is that, you know, we're not doing this in a vacuum. So we can learn from the experience of other people, by people telling us stories. Oh, how'd you do that? You know, that's a knowledge flow. Or getting content that you need. So let me look this up. I need to do something. Let me look at this video on how to do it. Or let me look up this content. And that's where some of the technology is helping to get people the right content at the moment that they need it. So that's where these are learning experience platforms are moving towards getting that so that people can apply the content when they need it in the workflow, not just like in the abstract, you know, when they 3 months before or whatever, but when they need it. So that's that inflow, right? But then there's the outflow. We can then share with each other, and this happens, you know, okay, oh, I learned this, here, let me share this, you know, or someone asks me a question, I'm going to share my experience with someone else. And that's that knowledge outflow. And when it happens in an organization, that's how you start having learning organizations. And people start reflecting on what happened and other people are sharing. And that's kind of, again, the core part of what people do. We have 3 jobs, right? You know, do the job, learn, and share, right? And learn, and part of that is getting that input and output of knowledge. And that's where the knowledge flows. And what we can do is create systems to enable that, to make it easier for that to happen. And that's what technology is great at, if it's done used properly.
Do you find that it's challenging to get learners to actually sit down and think about and what they've learned, and because that last step of reflection seems to be, you know, a lot of people tell you, oh, we don't have time for that. We've got to go. We got to do whatever, and yet that single element is like the cornerstone or the keystone of this stuff. If you don't think about it, if you don't reflect on it, you A, may not remember it, and B, you may not have other insights that come from that. So how do you encourage that?
Well, there are 2 aspects to that, a couple of things related to that. One is, first of all, some degree of reflection is actually our natural learning process. So my daughter, I'll give you the example of her riding the bike, right? So she's, you know, she's 6 years old, and she just turned 7. Okay, so what did she do? She took a turn, and she skidded out. Okay, and fell and scraped her knee a little bit. What did she do? She went over and looked back at where she skidded, and she saw something. Oh, there's sand there. So she kind of reflected on what happened. It's a natural process. Now, sometimes we feel like we kind of lose that a little bit. So that's one thing, is that we actually, it's not always a conscious process, but we're doing that a lot. Oh, why did that happen? So first of all, we are reflecting on it. Second of all, it can be structured more. So, for example, the military is an example. They always have what's called after-action reviews. They have a process where that goes on. In the case of, you can do things like, it doesn't have to be this general, how things happen. It can be very quick, what we call, like micro-targeted reflection. Mm-hmm. Oh, how'd this happen? How'd this go according to these criteria? Let me see how it went, and stopping and doing that. And this is built into a lot of processes like agile processes. So, so for example, agile processes, there's actually built-in process called a retrospective, where you, in the Scrum process and things like that, where you do that. So if you can build it in, it works. Now, one quick example. If there was a simple example on leadership, this research was done on leadership, that all they did was have somebody learning to be, working as being a manager. They would meet with a coach, and the coach would just ask, how did it go last week? what did you do? What are you going to do differently next week? That's it. Just those 3 questions.
Wow.
And then every week they would do that. And it actually improved their performance as a manager, the fact that they took the time to reflect. So part of what we can do as learning and development leaders is to say, hey, how do we set up ways to make it easy to reflect? And it doesn't take a lot of time, really. It just, if you do it, you get big benefits, because then you get that learning. And if learning is part of our job, and reflection is, if it's a mindset too. If learning is part of our job, and reflection is a key part of learning, therefore reflection is part of our job as well.
Amen.
That's a way to look at it.
Yeah, good point. Do you find in working with the younger folks, the Gen Z people, that they're tuned into that they understand that, or that they are just kind of looking for the answer on Google or Facebook or somewhere else? What are your thoughts?
Well, to me, first of all, I don't think it's a hugely, I think there's more about it that's basic to all humans than what generation they're on. So I'm not a big fan of looking at it from a generational perspective. However,
good.
I think that a lot of people, it's not generational, but people who are used to using technology, whether it's from generational or not, they tend to realize, okay, they do that. So, you know, people learn, I have a son who's also, who's a millennial, you know, or, you know, who's basically, you know, he learned to play guitar. How did he do it? He didn't want to take formal lessons. He watched YouTube, he tried stuff, he listened, you know, he did, you know, people do that. And so and know how to use, actually people in younger generations, or people who are grew up with the digital technology, tend to be more comfortable using it, saying, oh, I'll just look that up on Facebook. I'll just look that up on, you know, Google and see how to do that, or YouTube. So to me,
they built that habit.
It might be easier for that.
Yeah, yeah, they built that habit of where they go looking for information. Vincent.
Just wanted to let everyone know we're about 2 to 3 minutes from Cinderella's slipper disappearing and our current webinar ending, which we can always continue, but I'm just letting everyone know we're almost to 12:45. So
yeah.
Any concluding comments, Marty and Miller?
Marty, can you put some contact details for our audience in chat so that they can follow up with you if they have more questions?
Yeah. And
I don't think we're going to get deluged with questions, but there we are. Okay.
Yeah.
Super.
Oops. Yeah. And yeah, let me do that. I'm going to put.
That's pretty.
Oh, thank you. I'll do it. I'm going to just. I can also do it this way too. Yeah, glad to talk more about it. Sorry, it was a little bit shorter time than usual, and I tend to talk fast. But hopefully, there's some use out of it, and I'd love to, you know, expand on it some more with people. But I've done a lot of work, and if you look at my website, there's a lot of more resources related to some of this stuff.
Okay, we're seeing your screensaver, not your slide.
We're seeing the dolphin.
Yeah, we're seeing
the dolphin. Okay, sorry. Let me put that back.
All right, so we're down to about a minute. I want to remind everyone that we will have a recorded version of this for you to watch on our YouTube channel. It should be up in a few days. Takes a little time to get that done, but Marty, I want to thank you very much for your patience with our technical challenges today, and also for some really interesting information that kind of goes to the heart of training and how we should be thinking about it, and if we're not. I really look forward to the chance when this pandemic stuff is over and we can actually have you in a room with us. I don't know if we're all dead by then or not, but
yeah, that'd be nice.
But you know, it would be really nice to do that. And I want to thank Elizabeth again for talking to you and at least making this happen. We are at 12:45. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Kathleen, thank you for your co-hosting, and Vincent, thank you for your co-hosting.
We wanted to assure everyone that the technical issues, we're going to solve those. This won't happen again. And thank you for your patience, Marty and Miller especially.
Oh, well, that's fine. I'm glad I got a little time.
Yeah.
I will love to, you know, continue the conversation with anybody who'd like to. I love to talk about this stuff, and you know, maybe sometime I will come out there in person. That would be really nice once all this is over.
Yeah, I'm seeing some good compliments here. Thanks for a great session. You all did great despite the technical difficulty. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, I'm out of
Thanks,
here.
Marty.
Kathleen,
Thank you.
end the recording and end the meeting. Thank you.